Thank you for watching Mike's in the Garden, where it's my mission to show you just how easy it is to grow food. We're back again with my man, Sam Igo. What's happening?
Great to see you, Mike.
Yeah, we did this about a year ago, and we've had a lot of great feedback helping other people with growing, pruning, location planting, and we had a lot of great feedback, so I figured we'd bring you back again for year 2 in the food forest and see how far we've come and you know, keep helping each other figure out how we can grow some more food.
Absolutely. It's looking great out here. You know, there's a lot of growth since I was out here last year.
Yeah, I mean, the Florida tropics certainly help, but real quick, Sam, if you can, why don't you talk a little bit about what you do and how people can find more of you?
Yeah, I'm Sam Igo. My company is Central Florida Abundance. It's a regenerative landscaping company where I work with Florida-friendly edibles and Florida natives and integrate them into yards in ways that make them a functioning part of the ecosystem. We focus on building soil, building habitat for wildlife, and just making your yards a much more peaceful and inviting place for you and everything around you.
Yeah, and that's how we came across our paths. You were working with Jim, Food Forest Abundance, and I had heard you on a podcast, The Joyful Prepper, and that's how we connected. And you know, our focus is on edible, perennial plants that are just going to keep coming back year after year and providing, and low maintenance as opposed to having to go out every season and change a bed around and plant seeds. And even though that's fun and that can certainly provide as well, people are busy and sometimes it can be overwhelming and you can get discouraged when you plant something and it doesn't work out the way it properly does. I have yet to grow any summer squash or zucchinis. The bugs just come in and destroy them. But you know, my longevity spinach and my Okinawa spinach and my perennial plants, I see growth. I'm able to, you know, harvest and eat from them. And so that's really my focus, is a perennial food forest.
Right, and you know, you really highlighted that key point of the diversity, and that's how you're going to have a stable system. You know, when we talk about traditional gardening where it's rows of singular types of crops, they become very susceptible to, you know, disease and pest outbreaks that can just jump from plant to plant because they are so similar. Just like you pack a bunch of people into a confined city and it's easy for, you know, pathogens to spread. And so when we have diversity in these systems, it makes them much more stable, and you can guarantee that you're going to be harvesting something year round. And really to highlight on why we don't do as much annual cropping systems is because we're focused on building soil and building high functioning living soils. And when you're constantly disturbing that soil with tillage or even, you know, digging a hole every season to replant a plant, you know, that's going to break down a lot of mycelial networks. It's going to disturb fungi, and it's also going to expose that now bare soil to sunlight, which allows and cues weed seeds to germinate. And so when we keep perennial systems with minimal disturbance, we keep the soils covered with mulch, you're going to have a lot less weed germination, and you're going to have higher functioning soils, which are then going to in turn lead to higher functioning plants. You know, you're going to have more nutrient in your food because there's more nutrients in the soil.
Awesome. Well, I hope you guys are excited to take a look at my food forest. Year 2, believe I'm at 50 different edible food producing plants. So I guess we'll start here on top of my septic tank. So yeah, this is actually my leaching field for my septic. So I don't want to put anything in the ground like this big oak tree here that destroyed my leaching field. So a lot of these plants, I've got a black raspberry, some blueberries that aren't doing too good. So let's start with the blueberries here. What, if anything, are they still alive? Do they look like they're...
Well, we can check and see if they're still alive. We can scratch the bark a little bit and see if they're green. I'm going to say So you can see right in there where I just scratched the red off, and
Yeah.
you see a green layer.
Okay.
So that means that this plant is still alive.
Okay.
We can also see buds forming. So this time of year, it is common for blueberries to lose their leaves. That's not the only thing going on with these plants. Blueberries are one of those plants that do have specific soil requirements. They like a more acidic soil profile, which means they prefer a more fungally dominated soil.
Okay.
And that is something that can be created really in any spot.
Okay.
But it is something that takes time to build. And so when I was here last time, none of this dirt was here. So did you bring this in? Is this just wood chips piled up? What's going on?
Okay, so I laid down a layer of cardboard. I brought in some garden soil, but I would say it's 1/3 garden soil and then 2/3 of a layer of mulch on top.
Okay, so that's not a bad start for building a good fungally dominated soil. It just, again, takes time.
Okay.
One thing that can help, you can get inoculant for mycorrhizal spongy, either pieces of the mycelium or spores from the fungus, and incorporate that into your soil, which will kind of kickstart that mycelial network, which, if you don't do anything, will develop on its own in time. But your blueberries need it now, so it'd probably be good to inoculate it with some and, give them a bit of a start.
Okay. Now this one has some flowers on it. I'm pretty sure it's too late in the season to get any fruit from it.
This is the time that they will flower.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, it is possible that these will produce fruit. With the state of the plant, you may get 1 or 2 fruit off of this that will be pretty small.
Okay.
But as the plant becomes healthier, this is the time it's going to flower, and then the blueberries will ripen up March or April.
Okay. Now we're in between 2 black raspberry bushes here. One of them looks great, super
Yeah.
healthy. We've got all this new growth on it, and then this one here is probably. I know we can.
The whole top piece is definitely dead. Raspberries.
This is a Wani Llama. So I tried to propagate that from gold, so I don't know
okay.
if that's gonna. But this is the other black raspberry here. Is this similar to the soil structure and fungi needed like the blueberries?
Yeah, all
Okay.
brambles are going to have that same acidic profile. Blackberries, raspberries, dewberries. As far as the difference between these 2 plants, it could have been that there was an issue with this plant from the nursery.
Okay.
I wouldn't give up on it yet.
Okay.
I would say, these top canes are almost certainly done for. I don't see any budding on them, and this is one of those that I'm not willing to get close enough to scratch the bark.
Yeah. I was gonna say you could try if you want, Sam.
But with blackberries, raspberries, they will spread underground through runners, and so that root system stores a lot of energy. So even if this top growth dies back, it's possible that the root system's still alive and is going to send up new shoots.
Okay.
So I wouldn't dig it up yet, but this would also benefit from that fungal inoculation. Even using if you said you've been using worm tea in some parts of your yard.
I have castings.
Castings help too. It's not as an immediate of effect. When you have that liquid,
Okay.
you get a lot of the humic acids directly into the soil,
Okay.
which is what those fungi really look for.
So you were asking about my.
Yeah, I see you got a gallon jug over here. It doesn't seem to be a greenhouse.
It was doing some greenhouse work
okay,
for
it is
me.
cut on the bottom.
Yeah. So I had a bunch of ashwaganda in a pot, and as it started the temperatures were dropping the last month or so. I figured let me spread them around the yard and keep 1 or 2 in a pot and see if I can get them, out and about. So I do have another one in the back that I been using this greenhouse on, and I mean, they're not dead, and that one looks like it has some new growth on it there.
Yeah, and this does as well.
Okay.
You know, they're still growing, and you did pick a good spot for this one. They do like growing in the shade.
Okay.
You know, it's an understory plant. Being under this oak tree here, at least is going to protect it from some sun. So yeah, it doesn't look too bad. Do you know how to harvest ashwagandha?
They turn into like a berry? Is it a seed or is it a berry?
The tubers underneath is really what you'll
Really?
pick.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you pull this whole thing up?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But you know, you can use those tubers to, you know, propagate another one.
Okay. Because I have seen videos where, I mean, it looks like a big bush with like red kind of seeds or like flowers on them, and I've just seen them like crumple the seeds and toss them in the ground, and some of them grow back. But
Yeah, I mean, you can propagate them by seed as well. You know,
Okay.
it is a flowering plant. And they're, you know, nice perennial shrubs, even if you're not harvesting.
Right.
You know, it'll fill in this spot real well. Another one that's going to benefit from, you know, improving the soil. It likes a rich forest soil, which usually is fungally dominated.
okay,
Not many perennial woody plants are going to enjoy growing in higher pH, bacterially dominated soils. That's more of our grasses, you know, our scrub plants that grow in, you know, sandy prairies. But if you're growing something that would traditionally be in a forest or, you know, on the forest edge, they're going to want a fungally dominated forest soil, which having the wood chips is a great start for that, because, you know, fungi are one of the main things that break down that wood. So you're off to a good start, and it's just going to take usually a year or two to really get it stable. Because, you know, think about the structure of soil. People always talk about, you know, you want your soil to have appropriate structure, you know, loamy. But when you bring in soil or any material, that process of moving it or having it in a bag is going to destroy any sort of structure it has. And so once you lay it, then you can start to, you know, build healthy soil structure. I always tell people the best soil you can buy is not good soil, but it is still good to get the best you can because it'll give you a good starting point.
okay. Now watch out behind you there. I've got a sage plant.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if that's doing much right now, but stick her back in there.
And I mean, it doesn't look, it's not dead. Definitely not at the peak of health. It is not the best time of year for it.
Okay.
So in the spring, you know, it could pick up and start to look a little bit nicer. It's got some new growth coming in down here.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of the growth come from the bottom. I had several of these in pots, and
Just two separate plants planted next to each other,
I
I would assume.
that's what it looks like, actually. Yeah.
Sometimes that could hinder their ability. I'd say that's probably not what's going on here. It does seem to be very dry up here.
Yeah, it is pretty dry.
Yeah, I would, and I mean, the sage isn't really one to care about dryness as much, but a lot of these plants will. And so, you know, rain is unpredictable, and if you want a bed that is just irrigated by rain, it's kind of, the process really goes with picking the best plants that are going to survive the dry conditions between them, and then seeing what does. You know, some things in theory should be able to survive a drought, but may not in your yard. And so, you know, if you got some things you want to try out here, give them a shot. But without irrigation, you know, they may not all make it. What about your pots? Are you watering those?
I mean, I have been with the rain barrels. When it rains, barrels fill up pretty quick,
Mm-hmm.
And then usually when it's dry, like I hand watered these the other night. I hand watered them about twice this week. We're supposed to get a bunch of rain tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I'm just letting them be right now. The rain barrels are pretty low. But, you know, I've kind of been on a weekend, couple days a week watering schedule. And then, you know, depending on when it rains and how much is in the rain barrels, I've stopped using, you know, like a sprinkler system. And,
You're off city water for your irrigation?
yeah.
Well, that's good.
Well, there's actually no irrigation right now. This tree stump also ruined our irrigation. So
Oh, okay.
I've been thinking about how to develop a new irrigation system, whether it's like a gravity drip.
Do you have any collection off your gutters right now?
I have two rain barrels, two 35-gallon rain barrels. And that's where it's the lazy man's rain barrel. So I just take the lid off, dunk the water can in there, go around and do my watering. So that's kind of where I'm at with the watering. But I mean, they get a good drink every couple days. Maybe it's not enough, but it's so unpredictable with the rain here, when it's going to rain and how much. I mean, they could say 80% chance of rain. That could be a 5-minute shower.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. It might be tomorrow, and I know it's supposed to be a morning rain.
Yeah.
But you know, it's so when you're gardening that way, you know, that's fine. You just may have to compromise on what plants are in there. A really easy flower for here, two easy flowers, dune sunflower and blanket flower will not be bothered at all by any period of drought, and they're going to bloom most of the year. Rosemary would be a really great herb for this bed. You know, it's not going to care about the drought, and you know, you can tuck it in one of those corners on the side where it's going to get a little bit more sun, but it really won't mind the shade either. I don't know. I'm assuming this probably gets half a day of sun.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be, the sun rises up over here, so it gets a bunch of morning sun. This is about 1 o'clock, and then, I mean, now it's 3:30, 4 o'clock, so probably not until 5 is it going to get a little bit of sun at night, but not too much.
Yeah, so rosemary would be a good option. You've got the aloe out here. You know, that's another great medicinal herb. Firebush. Well, I guess that is the other caveat here, is that we're on top of a septic field and we can't have anything too deep rooted.
Right.
But you know, that takes you back to the flowers and the herbs. Yeah, your cranberry hibiscus probably won't cause too many problems. By the time it's down very deep, you know, it's going to be the end of its season.
Yeah, I'm thinking of just cutting that, seeing what happens, because I just had so many sprout up that, I mean, even in that Leaf of Life plant, there's one growing out of there.
Yeah, I see that.
And I certainly didn't spread that many seeds around, so they kind of just developed on their own, which is great. That's what I like to see. But I just brought it up here. Before I had the Cuban oregano and before I had the sage and the ashwaganda, I was trying to fill out this this spot up here.
Now that Cuban oregano, I'm not entirely certain on its root profile, but I mean, it is a large woody plant, like once it establishes. And I mean, you know, I've seen crazy things planted next to septic fields that people just decide not to worry about. And so it's something that I will caution you on, but definitely leave it up to your own discretion.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep an eye on it. I mean,
you definitely want the right idea with, you know, putting your citrus in pots.
Yeah. I mean, this one doubled or tripled in size since I put it in that pot. But you know, I'm hoping since we replaced the 30-year-old septic system, that you know, now we're, you know, not having to worry about it too much.
Yeah, never have to replace it again.
Well, maybe
while you're here, at least.
Yeah. Be the next person's problem. I'm hoping we're still in frame, but I'm gonna bring the camera over here if you want. I want to talk about the citrus here.
Okay. Yeah, they don't look too hot.
No, they don't. So I'm not even sure what type of citrus they are. Now this one, it looks like it could probably be pruned down here or prune up top. I'm not sure.
My first question is, what kind of soil are they in?
I mean, this is a heavy compost, kind of sandy soil.
Heavy compost? Is this something that you made, or?
Yeah, my compost, which is
Okay.
a lot of like dry, sandy. I mean, you can see some eggshells in here, and it's pretty. Yeah, it's actually pretty moist down here, actually.
Yeah.
But I mean, it looks pretty nutrient rich.
The soil doesn't look bad. The trees are definitely nutrient deficient.
Okay.
And, you know, it's one thing to nail down exactly what that is, but what I would say is like a worm tea, compost tea, some kind of humic acids to revitalize the microbial population that should be populating that compost.
Okay.
And then that's going to kickstart the nutrient cycling, which will allow, the tree to uptake whatever nutrient it's missing. And most likely what's going on is it's not that the nutrient is lacking in the pot because you have that compost. It's more likely that the balance of nutrients is off, and so it's making it impossible for the plant to uptake the nutrient that it needs, because all of those elements, potassium, nitrogen, phosphorus, calcium, they all work together. And if you have too much of one, it may be impossible for the plant to take up another one. So I'd say, get some humic teas, compost tea, worm tea, something with a good microbial population, and kind of douse this whole thing. See if you can kickstart that nutrient cycling in there.
Now, how often are you supposed to apply a compost tea, a worm tea?
It's really down to discretion. A well-made compost tea, vermicast extract, you could not apply them too much because they're not going to burn your plants. They're not high in any sort of nutrient that's going to overpower anything. It's really just the microorganisms that populates them. As far as, how long to wait in between, just for cost effectiveness, I would say if your plant is struggling, do it once a week. A full drench once a week. And that's a diluted drench. So depending on, the tea that's made, you're taking a couple ounces to a gallon of water, and then drenching the whole plant in that once a week. If your plant looks okay and it's just, growing well normally, I'll normally hit them at the beginning of the growing season, in spring or whenever they decide to leaf out. And then I'll hit them when they start to flower, just to kind of add some immune protections while they're in that more fragile state, because they're putting their energy into fruit. And then I'll give them another dose after they're done fruiting. And that's just kind of, it's like, you would take some vitamins occasionally, but it doesn't need to be a daily regime. Most of the time you want the plant growing on its own. You want it depending on the soil microbes for its nutrients. You don't want to spoon feed it everything it needs, because we want hardy plants that aren't going to have to be catered to every day.
Sure.
And I mean, I'd say the same thing with this one. You can tell, so really the main sign that it's nutrient deficient is the lack of color in its leaves.
Right.
I'm sure you could look up this exact coloration and see what nutrient it's lacking. And it's, yellowing at the edges on more mature leaves, because you can see the newer leaves haven't quite taken that discoloration. So that means the plant is withholding nutrients from the old leaves and putting it into new growth. And this is actually starting to bud out too. And so it's not worried about these leaves because it doesn't have enough nutrients to supply everything. But even finding out exactly what nutrient it's missing doesn't mean that you should just pile whatever that is
Sure.
onto the plant, because, you know,
Be
like I said,
deficient in something else.
exactly, you know, it may already have enough of that in the soil.
Okay. I know there was talk of some kind of bug or disease going around that was harming a lot of the citrus plants, at least last year, late 2023.
It's been greening, which is spread by a small insect that feeds on new leaves. Um, it's wiped out citrus groves, you know, across Florida. It's pretty much ruined the citrus industry. And then we have canker, which is a fungal infection, which comes from the soil and infects the roots of the plants. I don't really see signs of that. I mean, it's really hard to tell if they're infected because the leaves are already so poor, and this one really has no leaves on it.
Right.
But what you'll see is a lot of curling of the leaf sides, and then the real sign that you have greening is your fruit that it produces will never ripen. It'll just rot on the tree before it fully develops. So both of those diseases affect the plant's ability to uptake nutrients, which doesn't normally lead to those kind of discolorations. But, you know, a workaround that people has found is using foliar-based nutrient blends to feed the citrus trees through their leaves. So even if they're infected by the greening, by the canker, they can still, you know, live on. And actually, the University of Florida has done research on wild citrus and found that citrus growing in healthy habitats, which are in the understory of a mature forest in, you know, old forest soils, can be infected with greening and not show any signs of stress. And that's because they're already healthy, they have a high functioning immune system, and when we have, you know, the citrus industry will grow trees in full sun in poor soils, and so when they become infected, they have no life left in them. They're already living on their last leg. And then every tree in those groves are usually clones, because citrus doesn't really grow true from seed. It's easy for those diseases just to spread through the whole system. And these citrus trees aren't necessarily growing in ideal conditions either, because they're in pots, which would never be really ideal for any tree. But at the same time, you know, it's new potting soil. It hasn't established any sort of good soil structure yet, and so they couldn't be at peak efficiency. They're not dead though, so we keep working on the soil. You know, we nurse the trees, and, you know, they've got a chance of coming back. Plants are resilient.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I mean, just looking at the bottom down here, is it too early to prune any of this, or should I prune any of this growth down at the bottom?
So you're definitely going to want to prune this tree. It's very messy. The first thing to think about when you're pruning is airflow. You want, you know, wind to be able to pass through the tree, cover the surface area of the leaves, and so you don't really want leaves touching each other or branches overlapping.
Okay.
So the first thing I see is this branch right here that comes straight up through the middle of the tree.
Right.
And that would be the first one that I would take out. Now, you know, the other thing is when a tree is in stress, you don't really want to prune it that's not really a good time to prune.
Okay.
You know, if it's barely alive, sometimes it's better just to let it keep growing for a bit. But sometimes if you can take off a couple branches that the tree doesn't need to put energy in, it can redirect its energy into more productive branches. So I would pick, you know, if you were going to prune this tree, maybe 2 branches to take. This would be the first one.
Yep.
And then really maybe this one.
Right.
And then you could take this dead piece of wood off as well.
Right.
What I'm really interested in is where this tree was grafted, because what it looks like is it was grafted right here.
Yeah.
And then this was the main shoot of that scion wood they put on.
Right.
But it died back. And so now this is whatever the rootstock is, which is probably like a sour orange or a sour lemon.
Right.
So, you know, if this tree does fruit one day, it's probably going to be whatever fruit that this rootstock is.
Right.
Also, judging by the thorns, it's, you know, usually the cultivated ones will have a little less of a mean touch to them. So that's something to consider.
Okay.
You may be putting your effort into a sour orange. But, you know, if you could get a healthy citrus tree, then you could graft other varieties of
Sure.
citrus onto this.
Right. Right. Okay.
This one definitely looks worse, just, you know, based on the lack of leaves. But I do think it's the original graft. I'm assuming the graft is right here.
Yeah, it looks like a nub.
So I would say these are the same citrus tree. They're both growing out of, you know, this grafted scion, because the leaves are the same. You know, they've got these wings down here.
Yep.
And normally if, you know, two different citrus are going to have very different types of leaves.
Okay.
And actually, I wonder, because this also has the wings. So either they're probably the same type of citrus, and maybe that one is shot, because it's got those same thorns and those same leaves as this one. I wouldn't give up on either of them yet.
Okay.
You know, see if you can get them to produce. At the very most, if you can bring them back to life, you know, that's an experiment and a test of, you know.
Sure.
Yeah, and then when you have more desirable citrus from a, you know, you get them, you know what they are, they're tagged, you'll be able to keep them alive. It would be interesting to see.
I was told these were the same. I was told these were some kind of Florida orange.
A Florida orange.
Yeah.
I wonder if they just are intentionally sour oranges then.
Very well could be. The person I got them from, that's what they knew. So.
I mean, eating them is gross, but they make really good, like, marmalades and jellies. You know, you just got to sweeten it. And I see people use them in place of, like, lemons for, like, you know, if you are making a jam and you need pectin, you'd add, like, a lemon for that. You know, you can add the sour oranges instead, and it kind of gives it a different flavor.
Okay.
So, you know, they still have their uses. Plus,
Yeah,
it's a fun experiment. And
is.
if they're healthy, they'd be pretty.
Yeah. Now, I know the mango tree you had recommended, you know, almost cutting it to where it starts promoting more branches out instead of up. Is that something you would do with a citrus tree too?
For production, yes. Really, a citrus tree should be like a single trunked tree with branches, more like an avocado.
Okay.
But then they become very hard to harvest. So, you know, this has a nice shape. It's already got two main trunks, and so just kind of maintaining those. I would, you know, maybe cut it around here so it would start to branch out. But, you know, you don't want branches going towards the middle.
Right.
So, like, cutting this branch would be important so that, you know, it's not going to put more growth into that wasted direction. Choosing one of these branches to cut,
Right.
you know, whichever one looks healthier, honestly, I'd pick this one, because this one is soon just going to overlap with those.
Right.
You know, doing things like that just to kind of straighten it up. And then letting the tree choose how it wants to branch. You know, it's not going to be like a mango where if you cut it here, it's going to send up, you know, shoots all along that point. Like, it's going to send, you could cut it here and it'll send a shoot out down here.
Right. Right. Okay.
So, you know, they're a little more, they're different with how they want to grow because they don't want to be a bush. But we can keep them shorter at least.
Thank you for watching Mike's in the Garden. To check out all of our clips and videos with our walk and talk with Sam Igo from Central Florida Abundance, click on the link in description below. We have a whole playlist, and please feel free to comment with any questions. Reach out to Sam, and please like and subscribe. More great content from Mike's in the Garden and my Central Florida Food Forest. Peace and love, everybody.